Hello BookTube and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. So if you've been following this channel for the past few weeks, you probably already know what I'm going to say. I'm sorry, it's been a busy week. I hardly got any reading done. So as has been the practice for the last several weeks, this weekly reading vlog is largely just going to be an apology for not having read much this week. So yeah, it's been a busy week, and again, I'm going to try and get into details of my personal life as little as possible. But suffice it to say, I had a couple marking deadlines at work that were stressing me out most of this week. I was also balancing between my 3 jobs and also continuing to track down forms, the life in Vietnam, trying to get my work permit sorted out, tax forms sorted out, and a toddler and a new baby in the house. So between all of that, I got very little reading done. Although, I do have to confess, I spent loads of time on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. This, again, is something that's becoming a little bit predictable on this channel. I make this confession every week. I've come to the conclusion that I suffer from some sort of internet addiction, social media addiction, just the constant urge to just check it. Just check news sites to a lesser extent. It's a great way to procrastinate, or maybe a terrible way to procrastinate, depending on how you want to look at it, because you're already on your computer anyways. I mean, you're doing your grading on your computer, you're entering your grades in your computer, you're checking your work email on your computer, and there's just so many things to keep checking. And then it just feels so natural to extend that checking into your social media, and that eats up a lot of time, especially because quite often you feel like a need to get like a hit from the social media. Like you don't really get satisfied until you've seen something new, or you've spent an appropriate amount of time on it or something. So, I mean, as always, I say this every week, my reading probably could have been better if I had somehow managed to take that time I spent wasted on Twitter and Facebook, etc., and transfer it to reading. That being said, though, I'm not sure how much it's feasible to transfer that time because, yeah, I mean, like I was just saying, Twitter and Facebook and all of that, it works great as a procrastination tool. And that's what I use it for, procrastinating when I should be doing other stuff. Reading requires me to focus my mind. And if I'm going to muster the effort to focus my mind, well, then I might as well be working on those deadlines I have for my job, right? Then I might as well actually be getting work done. Whereas the mindless internet surfing is mindless. So, yeah, I definitely need to cut down on the amount of time I waste on the internet. I'm not sure I can just take that time and transfer it to my reading time, because I've got other stuff I need to be getting done, and that's where the priority will be first. But yeah, all that's by way of confession and excuse and explanation. Very, very little read this week. I do have a book haul of sorts to report on. Actually, it's not really a book haul, but I'm counting it as a book haul. I have finally broken down and gotten a Kindle. And I say finally because people have been telling me to get a Kindle for years now. How many years has Kindle been out? I can't count the number of times I've been in conversation with people. And I've been mentioning the woes of expat life, expatriate life, how difficult it is to get books in Vietnam, how I like to load up on books when I'm back home in the US, but I can only carry a small number of them with me on the plane. And people all the time say, you should get a Kindle, you should get a Kindle. I can't count the number of conversations I've had over the last 10 years or so, or longer, where people have been recommending Kindles to me. I held off for the longest time because, like many of you on BookTube, I like keeping my place in a physical book. But also, I was just mentioning the way I waste so much time on the computer, on social media and Twitter, and just how I waste so much time every week on the computer screen. Well, not only waste time. A lot of it is time I have to spend on the computer because of work. But in addition to that, there's the wasted time. In spite of myself, in spite of all the time I waste on the computer, I do worry that I'm ruining my eyes and I'm burning out my eyes. So that was one of the reasons why I was reluctant to get a Kindle. But as I'm sure you've had countless people tell you, Kindle apparently isn't bad for your eyes the way that a computer screen is. There's some sort of special lighting or lack of lighting. It's not really lit. It's just like ink on a book. But that's what everyone says, right? The other reason I guess I didn't want to get a Kindle is just, I'm a technophobe. Like to live a simple life. Didn't want to spend the money on it. But they're fairly cheap, especially compared with how much money I spend on books year round. Now, I don't actually have a working credit card set up here in Vietnam with which I can buy books off of Amazon to put on the Kindle. Although, who knows, maybe I might get that sorted out one day. But in the meantime, there is all sorts of free ebooks on Project Gutenberg that I've been wanting to read for quite some time. Steve Donahue said on one of his videos recently that most people don't realize just how much stuff is on Project Gutenberg. Maybe that's not as true of BookTube. Maybe BookTube people realize it. But if you haven't realized it, there is a lot of stuff on Project Gutenberg. I think Steve Donahue in one of his videos says most people think that Project Gutenberg is only Charles Dickens. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff. And indeed, Steve Donahue is right. There is a whole bunch of other stuff. Stuff I have perused on Project Gutenberg. Well, there's the Oz books for one, as I've been working my way through the Oz series. But there's also a whole lot of pulp fiction from the turn of the century. The Zorro books, the Tarzan books, the John Carter of Mars books. But there's also, the Project Gutenberg seeks to upload any book in the public domain, which essentially means any book over 100 years or so. And there's just so much stuff on there. There's fantasy, some of those fantasy books that Steve Donahue has been recommending on his channel, like the Lord Durnsley, the Elfland's Daughter or something like that, is on Project Gutenberg. History books. I was just on there the other day searching for a history of ancient Athens, and there's a big 2-volume thing on Project Gutenberg. So I don't know why I'm going like this. It's an electronic file. Biography of Thomas Paine on Project Gutenberg. Now, these are all older than 100 years old, so that's why they're uploaded. But, the history books from the 18th and 19th century and from the early part of the 20th century are getting uploaded onto Project Gutenberg. And, of course, the classics. So I have it in mind. Well, sorry, let me back up a little bit. Another reason I've held off on getting the Kindle is because for the past 10, 11 years, I've been living in Cambodia and Vietnam. And in Cambodia and Vietnam, it's very cheap to take a file to a printing shop. There are printing shops all over, and have them printed out for you, and they bind it like this. I'm holding this as an example. This isn't from Project Gutenberg. This is from my school library, because all the ones I've printed off from Project Gutenberg over the years, I've not kept. You know, they're big and bulky and stuff like that. But it looks essentially like this. It's on A4 paper, so it's a little cumbersome to carry around with you. But they do print it up, and then they will even bind it for you and put these plastic sheets on for you. So when I was living in Cambodia, I had the printers print up the Three Musketeers series, one at a time. So there were 6 books in English translation in the Three Musketeers series. Got them all from Project Gutenberg. The Civil Wars by Appian. I had that printed out. One of the print shops. What else have I gotten printed out of the print shops over the years? Loads of stuff. Not all of it legal. Some of it PDFs that I illegally downloaded from dodgy websites. But a lot of it Project Gutenberg stuff in the public domain. But I've since moved. I'm no longer living in the city center. We've just had like a year of COVID lockdown in which I've hardly ever gone out. So I want to just take the files directly from Project Gutenberg. And I don't want to read them off my computer screen. I want to do the Kindle, what do they call it? They've got some sort of name for this, right? Or slogan. Reads like real paper. Sorry, that's not what I was thinking of. They have some sort of name for it. Paper white. Paper white, is that what they call it? Anyways, I wanted the Kindle paper white stuff. So in the immediate future, what I'm hoping to use this for is Dane Cobain and I are talking about continuing the complete stories of Oz after we finish the books by L. Frank Baum. This volume is only the ones by L. Frank Baum. Project Gutenberg doesn't have them all, but they have several of the Wizard of Oz books after L. Frank Baum's death. So I'm going to, at least the first 4, I think, read off the Kindle. I also, and I may talk about this in a later video, I have an idea that I want to do the classical mythology reading project, a Greco-Roman reading project. Sorry, Greco-Roman mythology reading project. And most of those books are on Project Gutenberg. And the ones that aren't are on other websites. So that could be another thing to use the Kindle for. And depending on how much time I have, a lot of that pulp fiction from around the turn of the century, that's all on Project Gutenberg, would love to make a reading project out of that. Given how little I read each week, I should be careful about how ambitious I am. But I have good weeks and I have bad weeks. I may pick up my reading again sometime before the year is out. I've got a baby now. I was thinking work is going to be less busy in a few months probably, but the baby will still be here. Well, a couple of years. Maybe I'll use the Kindle in a couple of years. So anyways, haven't read anything off the Kindle yet. Haven't even actually properly turned it on yet. I want to do some experiments with this to see how easy it is to upload the ebook from Project Gutenberg. Haven't experimented with that yet, but I've got it. So you may be seeing this sometime in the future, but not this week. This week I barely got any reading done. The Oz book. I am officially now behind. I'm going to send Dane an email shortly. We're doing this as a buddy reads. I was supposed to review The Tin Woodman of Oz, I think, 2 weeks ago, and haven't done that yet. Dane is very far ahead of me now. Anyways, I finished The Tin Woodman of Oz last week. I was going to review it this week, but I didn't have any time to review it. So this coming week I should have time. So I didn't get any new reading done on the Oz stories. I did listen to the Tin Woodman of Oz on audiobook to refresh my memory of it. I also watched Dane's review. He's ahead of me, so he's already published his review of the Tin Woodman of Oz. Sorry, I'm gesturing like this because I'll link that in the description down below. Dane's review. The Lord of the Rings, I'm continuing to work my way very slowly through the appendices in the back. So this week I read Appendix C and D. Sorry, finished up Appendix B. Finished up Appendix B, which was Appendix B is the Tale of Years. It's a chronology. Like I said last week, it's fairly interesting, although it's also largely a repeat of what was in the previous appendix and also in the main narrative. But you know, it's a chronology. It's interesting to an extent. And then Appendix C, finish that up, Family Trees. Sorry, you can see some of this here. So I did my best with this. And then Appendix D, which is explaining the calendar that's used in The Lord of the Rings. It's explaining the Shire calendar and then how that has related to the Numenor calendar. It's Numenor, right? And the adjustments that they made. And this goes on for, how long is that? About 10 pages. 10 pages explaining the calendar. Yeah. So about this time, I am thinking, why am I reading this? I mean, I'm glad Tolkien put so much work into creating his world. Like the world building in the abstract intrigues me. I find it interesting that Tolkien did all this work figuring out the calendar system for his world. I'm glad it exists out there somewhere in the world. I'm not sure I needed to read it. And consequently, when there was anything I didn't understand, or when there was a reference to something that was located somewhere else in the book, I didn't bother. I just kept chugging along with it. And then we get to Appendix E, the writing and spelling, which is much the same as the calendar. I'm glad, I'm intrigued in the abstract that Tolkien put in so much work figuring out his languages. I'm glad this exists in the world somewhere because it gives the Lord of the Rings world a complete and realistic feel to it. But I'm not sure I needed to read it. And same thing, I just kind of chugged through it. If there was something that I found a little bit confusing or didn't understand, I didn't linger on it too long. It's got the table here. The writing in particular is really hard to make sense of because he gives the chart here at the beginning of the chapter. Sorry, near the beginning of the appendices. And they're all numbered. And then he keeps referring to them by those numbers throughout the rest of the appendices. So to kind of keep track of what he's talking about, you've got to be constantly flipping back here to say, oh, right, which one was number 6 again? And I just can't be bothered with that. I don't care that much about the writing system, so I just kept reading. And I am now up to Appendix F, which is the languages. And this one looks like it's mostly all text, no charts or anything. So we'll see how this one goes. Yeah, these appendices, I could have not read that section on the calendar and still felt like I had perfectly absorbed the Lord of the Rings essence. And the same with the writing system. But Appendix A and B, when it's giving kind of the whole history of that Middle Earth, those ones I feel like I would have really missed out on something if I had skipped them. In fact, I feel like I didn't really get a sense of the lore of Middle Earth until I had read those. So those I would say are essential reading. They really make the book complete. Everything else I'm not so sure about. But anyways, I read from page 1438 to 1480, so 42 pages of appendices this week. Okay. The rest of it I just read 2 pages. So Leviticus, I just read 2 pages this evening, talking about the different atonement sacrifices. So if the high priest sins, there's one type of sacrifice. If the whole community sins, there's another type of sacrifice. I'm not quite sure who decides that the whole community has sinned. It says here, if the whole community of Israel has sinned inadvertently and without being aware of it has done something that is forbidden by the commandments of Yahweh, the community is to offer a young bull as a sacrifice for sin. Who gets that process going? Or I guess maybe a prophet comes. I don't know. And then sins of the leaders in the community is a different type of sacrifice. Sins of private individuals. And then some cases of sacrifice for sin. So they list different sins and the appropriate sacrifice for that. It's really boring, but that's the book of Leviticus for you, huh? That's what you're getting into. Herodotus, just a couple pages. I'm still reading about Xerxes marching his army into Greece. It's talking about the different commanders. They get to a lake and all the pack animals drink it dry. Yeah, I just read 1 page of this. It's a shame I'm not making better progress on this book because I actually do enjoy it. Tom Holland has done a very good job of making this readable, and much of it is inherently interesting. It's just that the book is a little bit bulkier than this one. So this tends to be the book I put in my backpack when I go to work. And also, there's a lot of faffing around with the maps and the footnotes at the back. So it's not a good book to read like when you're waiting at the bus stop or something like that. So again, that's why this tends to be my go-to book. And this one just stays at home on my desk for when I have free reading time, which this week has been never, with the caveat I made at the beginning of the video. Okay, same with the grammar book. I just read 2 pages. It's on possessive forms. There was something I thought was interesting. They were talking about all the different uses of the possessive. And they gave the example of saying John's portrait. So John, John apostrophe S, John's portrait. And they said that this could mean one of three things. It could mean a portrait that John owns, like, he bought a famous portrait at an art auction or something. Or it can mean a portrait that John has painted. Or it could mean a portrait representing John, like John's, the portrait of John. So they say possession, agency, and representation. I never really thought about before all the different meanings that possessive can have. But that's what those 2 pages have been about, is the different meanings that possessive can have. And I thought that was interesting. Okay, and then Tieng Viet 123 finished off page 13 last week. These are the letters. These are the example words. I got my wife to translate them. And I have been working on page 13 this week. Again, the previous 2 pages were the vowels. This is the consonants. There's an audio that comes that's supplemental to the book, which you can find on the website. But the audio only reads out the letters. So like bay, say, day, something like that. They don't read out the example words. So I've been listening to the audio, but for the words, I'm just practicing the written form. And again, I got my wife to help me with the translations there. So that's what I'm working on this week. Yeah, and that's it. That's it. So aside from the appendices of Lord of the Rings, I just read 2 pages of Herodotus, 2 pages of Leviticus, 2 pages of the grammar book, and then I've worked my way through 1.5 page of the Tieng Viet 123. So yeah, this coming week could actually be better, but I don't want to make promises. Let's just see how we do at the end of next week, huh?